So they're actually nerfing Kog'Maw. How was I supposed to know he was OP when nobody played him? Hey, what's going on, Summoners? My name is Irene, and I'm happy to host another patch rundown for you guys. Unlike last patch, patch 10.18 is an eventful patch with a ton of content we need to run you guys through. Unlike last patch, patch 10.18 is an eventful patch with a ton of content we need to run you guys through. If this is your first time here, welcome, and we hope you're here to stay. We're going to run you guys through every new change for patch 10.18 and also provide you guys with tier lists for each role compiled by our in-house analysts. With that said though, I want to encourage you guys to check out ProGuides.com, where we've just recently added VOD reviews. If you've ever lost or don't know what you could have done better in a game, one of our coaches would be more than happy to take a look at your gameplay and provide you some insightful feedback. Finally, for our question of the day, if League were to be changed into a 4v4 game, which role would you take out? If you take out a solo laner, let's just say that we'd only have 2 lanes, kind of like how Twisted Treeline was. The easy answer for me would be to take out supports, but I'd want to see a game without the top lane. There are plenty of memes out there talking about how top laners live on their own island in isolation, and I'd love to see how true this is with no top laners in the game, just for observation purposes. Let me know your answers in the comments below. With that said, let's hop into the video. First up, let's run you guys through all the skins we've got introduced in this patch. Psyops Ezreal, Ezreal Pristine Edition, Master Yi, Shen, Sona, Vi, and Ziggs are now available in the store, so make sure to check them out. They have a pretty edgy but cool look, and I suggest you guys check them out and see if you want to purchase them. Next, let's move on to the balance changes. We've got one systems change to cover first, so let's go over that one quickly. Guardian has been nerfed. There's a scare over whether this keystone will be too powerful in competitive play, especially with the final stretch of the competitive season just around the corner. The shield value has been reduced from 90 to 250 plus 25% and 12% bonus HP to 90 to 250 plus 15% AP and 9% bonus health. This nerf is a pretty huge one, and I'm sure that a lot less players will opt into running it now. This hits the support role overall, making it feel a little weaker in the grand scheme of things. A lot of supports were starting to run this keystone, including many enchanters, so the loss of 10% on the AP ratio is a pretty big nerf to squish your supports that liked running this keystone. We've seen a rise in the play rates of several enchanters, and with these Guardian nerfs, huge changes for the support role are bound to take place. With that said, let's head over to the top lane where we've got a few balance changes to cover. Set is up for another nerf. Like always, he's still too powerful in competitive play. For solo queue, he's basically hitting the mark, so Riot has stated that they're changing him in a way that'll still let him thrive in solo queue. Set's passive bonus attack damage on his second hit has been changed from 50 to 90 plus 15% of his total AD to 5 to 90 plus 50% of his bonus AD. Also, his Q's damage has been changed and is now 10 to 50 with 1% of the target's maximum health and 1 to 3% scaling. To summarize it, you get a lot more value out of building AD on Set, but if you build very tanky, you're losing out on a lot of damage now. This hurts Set's power as a flex pick significantly, and also means that players are going to have to change up the builds. We'll keep him in the B tier for now, as heavy damage builds on Set aren't too out of the norm and will likely work out just fine for solo queue. Finally, it's about time, but Shen has been nerfed. Following a buff, he became too powerful, and we listed him as one of our OP champions. He's gotten a small tuning with his passive shield, and it's been reduced from 70 to 121 to 60 to 111. This makes him a weaker laner and a little less tankier in the late game. Shen has felt a little too powerful during the early game, giving little to no breathing room to his opponents. Hopefully this will change. He'll feel a bit more balanced, but considering his high win rates in previous patches, we still believe he'll find success as an S tier top laner.
With honor.
Next on the agenda is Kale. She's been changed so that she's forced to interact more during the laning phase. The hold on to dear life and farm without even breathing the same air as my opponent playstyle just wasn't very fun. Kale's Q no longer refunds mana upon hitting champions, and the mana cost of her W has been increased from 70 to 100 to 90 to 130. Her E's mana cost has been completely removed, and the missile speed has been changed from 2,000 to 5,000. Being forced to fight more means that Kale will shine more in winning or even matchups, but get bullied even harder in losing ones. Overall, we expect Kale to stay around the same power level as a result. It's a win in some cases and a loss in others. Overall, the removed mana cost does mean that this is a net gain in power if she manages to scale up and reach the late game. Finally, Rumble has received some assistance. His Q's damage was increased from 175 to 315 to now being 180 to 340. The top lane meta hasn't favored Rumble, but with a buff to his main ability, things are looking swell for him. These buffs have come just in time for Worlds, and we don't expect to miss him there this year. 5 damage at level 1 isn't a huge deal, but 25 more damage later on is. And don't forget that Rumble's Danger Zone increases the effectiveness of these buffs as well, so expect to feel some heat on Summoner's Rift. Of course, this buff should also help him out as a mid laner and even as a jungler, so Rumble's value as a pick overall is higher than before. As a result of this buff, we've moved Rumble up to the A tier.
Now we're cooking.
One final change to the tier list is that we've moved Nasus down from the S tier to the A tier. We initially placed Nasus in the S tier because of his dominance in low to mid elo. However, with the current meta, it's a bit harder for Nasus to scale up effectively. With that said, let's run through our OP and S tier. In our OP tier, now alone all by himself, is Darius. Shen's been nerfed and knocked down, but Darius has remained untouched. With the nerfs to Guardian, pretty much every top laner is going to feel a bit stronger as they'll be more heavily rewarded when they do manage to reach the backline. Darius is no exception to this, and his incredible ban rates still reflect the frustration players find playing against him. Our S tier consists of Fiora, Garen, Jax, Urgot, Singed, Maokai, Camille, Shen. Make sure to do your best to get your hands on these champions whenever possible. Next, let's run through the jungle. First up in the jungle is Jarvan, an easy favorite of many, but it's no surprise that Riot has pushed for some buffs for one of Demasia's most prevalent warriors. His Q's damage has been increased from 80 to 240 to 90 to 250. A nice little 10 damage buff should make Jarvan a stronger duelist while also increasing his clear time. It's been pretty rough for him. He hasn't been finding much success as it's felt like he can't win many of his duels. With some extra damage, however, close matchups should swing into his favor, and the increased clear speed should also help him apply pressure onto lanes more quickly than before. We've moved Jarvan up to the A tier in response to this buff.
Demacia!
Xin Zhao also got buffed this patch. Some Demacian love doesn't hurt by any means. His W's thrust damage from 30 to 170 plus 75% total AD to 40 to 180 plus 80% of his total AD. Overall, it's a very big buff. Like Jarvan, Xin Zhao will now clear the jungle much quicker than before and also deal more damage. Xin Zhao now deals 20 more damage with his W, plus some more if he builds attack damage. With how straightforward Xin's ganks are, he should see a surge in his win rates in solo queue at least. It's possible that we'll see him more in competitive play as well because of the immense amount of early game pressure that he applies. Xin Zhao has been moved to the A tier as a result of his buff. And finally, Shyvana has received changes that aren't intended to make her any stronger or weaker. Instead, it's to give her gameplay some more clarity. Instead of her E checking champion hitbox boundaries, it'll check from the center when dealing damage. The explosion and visual indicators should now be more accurate for players. Also, the tick rate has been reduced from 1 second to 0.5 seconds, but the damage output is intended to stay the same. This is to add some responsiveness. Also, the area of effect's growth rate by rank has been removed. It'll now have an explosion radius of 345, rather than scaling from 220 to 300. As this change isn't intended to make her any stronger, we'll keep Shyvana in the A tier.
I smell fear.
We've also moved Zac down from the S tier to the A tier as his win rates have tapered off a bit as a result of the current aggressive meta. We've also got a new member in the S tier in Rammus. Thus, our S tier in the jungle consists of Evelynn, Hecarim, Kha'Zix, Karthus, Fiddlesticks, Rammus, Nunu, Rek'Sai, Vi, Elise, Kayn, and Graves. We want to make a shout out to Rammus.
Okay.
We've done this before, but wanted to note that this pick is for low elo friends. In Bronze, Rammus's win rate ended last patch around 54%, and in Silver, he still held a solid 53.3%. The fact that he was most popular in Silver also reflects that he's probably strongest around there. Players have a very hard time dealing with him because of his high damage output, tankiness, and reliable crowd control. A lot of the counterplay to Rammus comes from precautionary steps you need to take, and low elo players tend to miss these steps. They'll misposition or kite improperly and end up getting run over by his spiky shell. On top of this, they usually don't ward in the right place or buy the correct counter items. By the way, if you find jungling challenging, make sure to check out ProGuides.com where we've got coaches, a ton of live classes, and even courses that can help you guys improve. We have content by players like Nightblue and Mike Young, so you'll definitely want to check it out. Next, let's talk about those mid lane changes. First up is the fact that Galio got nerfed. Although he lacks popularity, Galio has been pretty OP for a while now because of his insane damage output and tankiness. He's a pretty safe pick because he's beefy enough to take a beating, while also dealing very good damage. Galio's Q gust damage has been reduced from 80 to 220 to now being 70 to 210. This hurts Galio a lot than you would think at first glance, because his wave clear has taken a hit. Wave clear is essential for mid laners, and I'm sure Galio players will feel this nerf. It's not enough to suddenly take him out of commission, but we do think these nerfs are pretty big. We've moved Galio down to the A tier as a result.
Good thing I don't have ears.
Ahri has received changes in the general direction of a buff this patch. Her base health regen was reduced from 6.5 to 5.5 to compensate for the following buffs. Next, her passive has been changed. The movement speed bonus has been moved to her W, and in its place, Essence Theft from her Q will now be her passive.
In other words, her passive now heals for 3 to 18 with 9% AP scaling per each enemy hit after she gathers 9 stacks. There were some other changes planned for her passive, but it seems like Riot has reverted them and kept it relatively the same.
Like we also said, her W now provides 40% bonus movement speed that decays over 1.5 seconds once cast. Also, it'll deal 200% damage to minions below 20% health. The cooldown has been increased from 9 to 5 seconds to 10 to 6 seconds. The mana cost increased from 40 to 55. And finally, its targeting on low health minions has been improved. We don't think she'll be moved to the OP tier just yet, but we'll continue monitoring her this patch just to make sure that's the case. Honestly, the W buffs seem massive, and it could actually put her up there. Getting the Kaisa treatment to her W, making it so it doesn't execute on minions, targeting them, and having that AI be better is massive. And having the on-demand movement speed increase, as well as having a better visceral feeling heal, is pretty big for this champion. We've cleaned up our mid lane tier list quite a bit for you guys this time around. The meta has been rapidly shifting, especially because a ton of AD mid laners are dominant forces there right now. First up, Yasuo is now an S tier pick. No surprises there considering that he recently did receive a buff. Rumble, Morgana, and Pyke have all been moved up into the A tier as well. Rumble received a buff this patch, so we expect him to do better as a mid laner. Morgana's buff from patch 10.16 also has bled over into the mid lane as well. And finally, Pyke mid is still seeing success. We bumped him down and decided to wait a little bit to reassess his strength and have come to the conclusion that he's still a solo queue king. Although he is a niche pick, players that have dedicated time to him are still killing it in solo queue because of his chaotic playstyle and resets. Thus, our mid lane S tier consists of Fizz, Vladimir, Zed, Talon, Kassadin, Katarina, Echo, Diana, Sylas, Annie, Karthus, Nocturne, and Yasuo. A small change we've made is that we've also placed Yone into the OP tier, a small upgrade from the S tier. Yone's ban rates have escalated beyond 56% in high elo. Overall, his ban rate doesn't fall much lower as it basically sits at the 50% mark. This is a clear indicator that players hate him more than they hate Yasuo, and that's saying something, especially when a lot of mid laners rely on projectiles, and that win wall can be a huge struggle to play around. Yone's mobility, high damage output, and ability to dive in and return to a hopefully safe point make him an extremely powerful champion. Unlike his brother, Yone's mobility isn't dependent on factors like minions, jungle monsters, or how enemies line up. He has full access to his mobility at all times, namely his E and R. He's free to cast them as he pleases, and some extra hybrid damage from his passive is definitely helpful in the sense that it makes it harder to itemize against him. If you're finding it difficult to play against Yone, don't hesitate to check out our website and contact one of our mid lane coaches. They'll help guide you and teach you how to play against him if you don't want to waste a ban on him and instead want to counter him through other means. Or if you want to join the dark side and learn how to play him yourself. That's all for the mid lane, so let's talk about bot laners next. Once again, Ashe has been nerfed. She's still too dominant, and now her base AD has been reduced from 61 to 59. For pro players, Ashe has way too much power as a pick. Her utility is absolutely insane, and the pros know how to use her too well. Ashe's Hawkshot provides a ridiculous amount of information at all stages of the game, and tracking the enemy jungler early on for free is such an undervalued asset. Her ultimate is an excellent engage tool, and honestly an amazing way to burn through enemy summoner spells as well. We're keeping Ashe in the S tier for now, considering that she lost 2 AD and her utility is there to stay.
I greet you.
Surprisingly, Kog'Maw got nerfed this patch. He didn't see enough play, so it's hard to say if these nerfs were really necessary. With this nerf on top of it, we might never see him get enough play either. His HP per level has been decreased from 90 to 85, and his armor per level from 3.5 to 3.25. With his damage untouched, Kog'Maw will feel a little more fragile in the late game. Nonetheless, late game Kog'Maw is still late game Kog'Maw, and we're okay just leaving him in the B tier for now. Misfortune is first on the list for buffs. She's still underperforming a bit, and Riot is giving her one more buff so that she hopefully sees competitive play. Her attack speed per level has been increased from 2.25 to 3%, and her strut's maximum movement speed has gone up from 50 to 90 to 55 to 95. The strut buff is basically a partial revert on a nerf she received all the way back on patch 10.10, so we expect her to feel much better this patch. Some more attack speed isn't a game breaker for Misfortune, but any marksman can make use of attack speed, so we'll take it. We've moved Misfortune into the S tier in anticipation of her return to power this patch.
The fun begins.
And finally, Twitch got a pretty big buff. Twitch's E-AP ratio has been increased from 20% to 33.3%. Next is the change to his ultimate, which is huge. The damage falloff per unit has been reduced from 10% to 5%. Also, the minimum damage has been increased from 40% to 70%. In other words, you'll be rewarded much more heavily than before if you're lining up your shots and hitting multiple targets. There is no situation where this is a nerf. At worst, it's net even when you're hitting a single target. Even if you're only hitting 2 enemies with your ultimate, you already get more damage out of it. In cases where there are minions in the way, you'll clear them more quickly now and reduce the number of obstacles. When the stars align and you hit several enemy champions, you'll basically see almost no reduction in your damage as well. We've moved Twitch up to the A tier as a result.
I was hiding!
Our bot lane's S tier for this patch consists of Caitlyn, Ashe, Jhin, Draven, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, the Lux and Sona duo, and Misfortune. You guys know the drill. Do your best to get these picks in your games. Most notably, Caitlyn. She feels extremely oppressive even after her nerfs. We'll let you guys know if anything changes in our mid-patch update, so make sure to hit that subscribe button to receive a notification for it. That's it for the bottom lane, so let's wrap it all up with supports. For supports this patch, we see no balance changes. The nerfs to Guardian were a pretty big one though. Enchanters like Lux and Lulu were previously running Guardian with a great deal of success. Other enchanters could run it as an alternative keystone when they needed some extra survivability or access to the entire resolve tree. However, since most champions have alternate keystones they can run, we don't think we need to make any big changes to the list. Unfortunately, champions like Rakan and Braum just straight up got the short end of the stick here. But even for them, the nerfs don't seem like big enough deals for us to make any changes. Overall, it just feels like the support role as a whole got a little bit weaker because keystone flexibility isn't as prevalent anymore this patch. This patch is definitely one we'll need to keep an eye out for, because a systems change is bound to cause some sort of shift in the meta. However, it might take some time for any changes to become noticeable. There is one change we've made to our tier list, however. In anticipation of this Guardian nerf, Lux has been moved from the S tier to the A tier. While she did receive a minor nerf last patch, her primary keystone has taken a hit, and most importantly, the AP scaling on it is lower than before. Lux, a champion who likes to build AP, suffers quite a bit from this change, but we do think she's still on the border of S tier. Thus, our S tier for supports this patch consists of Lulu, Blitzcrank, Senna, Soraka, Bard, Thresh, Morgana, Nami, Janna, Leona, and Alistar. That's going to conclude our patch rundown for patch 10.18. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure to leave any feedback you guys have in the comments below. Like always, I want you to check out ProGuides.com if you're interested in improving your gameplay with our abundance of resources. Until next time though, best of luck on Summoner's Rift, and I know you'll kill it in this patch, Summoners.